Have you ever noticed how, just when life finally seems to calm down, when the struggles ease, the losses settle, and peace begins to find you, something strange happens? People start praising you, opportunities appear, success knocks at your door. And yet, deep inside, a new kind of discomfort begins to stir. In our last 3 journeys together, we explored the first 3 spiritual tests that kind hearts often face: the pain of being misunderstood, the ache of feeling different, and the quiet devastation of losing everything you thought you needed. But tonight, dear one, we arrive at a different kind of challenge, one that hides not in sorrow, but in praise, a test so subtle, so easily overlooked, that many fail it without ever knowing it was there. It's the test that comes when life starts to reward you, when recognition arrives, when your words begin to matter, and the world finally seems to notice your light. Yet beneath that praise, a quiet question lingers: can you remain humble? Can you hold on to your truth when applause threatens to drown out your still, small voice within? So wherever you are, take a gentle breath, let your shoulders drop, and join me as we step into this next chapter of the journey, a wisdom so old, yet so needed in our noisy, restless world. In our last reflection, we saw how Kenji's devastating loss was never meant to punish him, but to quietly free him from what no longer served his deepest truth. And now, dear one, let's lean a little closer into this ancient wisdom, for it speaks to each of us in our own quiet moments of letting go. Emptiness is not a punishment. It's a space, a sacred clearing where what no longer nourishes your spirit is gently removed to make room for what truly belongs. When our hands are full of things, people, habits, attachments, that no longer serve our highest purpose, there's no space left to receive the blessings meant for us. It's like a careful gardener tending a wild, overgrown garden. To help the flowers grow stronger, the gardener must first clear the weeds. Not because those weeds are evil, but because their time has passed. Space must be made for light to reach what matters most. Think for a moment about the losses you've experienced in your own life. That relationship that ended just when you believed it was perfect. Perhaps it wasn't meant to carry you forward, but was preventing you from meeting someone who could love the real, unmasked you. Or that job you lost, the one that felt so unfair, so undeserved. Maybe it was keeping you trapped in a role that could never honor your true gifts. Or perhaps the money that vanished through circumstances you couldn't control was, in truth, tied to energies or expectations that didn't belong on your soul's path. The Buddha taught us this profound truth: suffering rarely comes from the events themselves. It comes from our attachment to how we think things should be. When we cling desperately to outcomes, to relationships, to possessions, believing our peace depends on them, we build our own suffering. But when we learn to hold life's gifts lightly, to appreciate them deeply while they are present, and to release them gracefully when it's time, we discover a peace that no external condition can steal. Let's practice this together, right now. Close your eyes. If you'd like, bring to mind something you've lost, something that still aches a little when you remember it. Feel where that ache lives in your body. Is it a tightness in your chest? A heaviness in your stomach? A tension in your throat? Now, take a slow, steady breath. Imagine yourself as Kenji, standing before the flames as his beloved workshop burns to ash. Feel the devastation, the disbelief, the sense that everything meaningful has just been destroyed. Then, in that moment of emptiness, hear the gentle voice of Master Yamamoto asking, "What were you really creating? The thing itself, or your attachment to the thing?" Allow yourself to consider, just for a moment, that this loss may have quietly freed you from something that was silently limiting your growth. As you breathe out, let the grief of what you've lost soften, even if only a little. As you breathe in, welcome a quiet curiosity about what this loss might now be making room for. Feel your hands opening, unclenching, releasing the need to hold tightly to what's already gone. Notice how much precious energy you've been using to resist this loss, and feel that energy begin to flow back into you as you stop fighting what has already happened. The Buddha once said, "You only lose what you cling to." This wisdom doesn't mean we should stop caring. It doesn't mean we should stop loving people, cherishing beauty, or savoring life's precious moments. It simply means we can love without grasping. We can appreciate without needing to own. We can enjoy without demanding permanence. And we can love people without trying to control their paths. As your breathing deepens now, and your body continues to settle, imagine that the losses in your life have been like Kenji's fire, not destroying your essence, but gently burning away what was never meant to stay. What if, just what if, everything you've lost was clearing the way for something far more aligned with your truest nature? What if the universe has been quietly preparing you for gifts so precious they require empty hands to be received? What if your losses have been hollowing you out, not to harm you, but to make you beautifully empty, like a flute, whose very emptiness allows it to sing? Notice now how your shoulders soften, how your jaw releases, how your breath flows a little more freely as you stop clinging to what was never meant to be permanent. You're making peace with the natural, sacred cycles of gain and loss that quietly govern this world. And you're discovering what Kenji, in his deepest sorrow, also came to understand. Sometimes, the universe has to empty your hands completely, so you can finally see what they were meant to hold. In our last reflection, we explored how loss and emptiness are not cruel punishments, but sacred clearings, making space for the gifts we were truly meant to hold. But now, dear one, we turn to a test far more personal, one that cuts deeper than misunderstanding from strangers and stings sharper than any material loss. This is the fourth spiritual test, the pain that arrives through the hands of those we love most. It is the ache that comes not from enemies, but from the people we would gladly give anything for: our children, our parents, our partners, our closest friends, those for whom we would sacrifice everything, forgive endlessly, and remain by their side through every storm. And yet, somehow, these are the ones who leave the deepest wounds in our hearts. You might be the devoted parent who gave everything you had to raise your children with love, wisdom, and care, only to watch them choose paths that quietly break your heart. Perhaps you are the adult child who honored your parents through every hardship, only to see them favor a sibling who barely calls or shows care. Or maybe you are the faithful spouse, the one who stood steady through every difficulty, only to discover betrayal in the place you most trusted to be safe. The cruel irony is this: the depth of our pain reflects the purity of our love. And though it feels unbearable at times, there is a deeper wisdom to why those with the gentlest hearts are given this test. Let me share with you a story from ancient China, one that gently reveals why such trials come to the purest souls. High in the misty mountains near the old capital, there lived a respected merchant named Master Chen. His life revolved entirely around a single devotion, his only son, Liang. Chen's wife had tragically passed during childbirth, leaving him to raise the boy alone while managing a prosperous tea trading business. Chen's love for Liang was legendary in their region. He turned down lucrative opportunities that required long absences, choosing instead to stay close to home, present for every moment of Liang's childhood. As Liang grew into a young man, Chen began gradually placing more responsibility into his son's hands, holding a tender dream in his heart, that one day, they would work as true partners, side by side. Every sacrifice Chen made, every decision he weighed, was filtered through a single, unwavering question: what would be best for Liang? But as the boy stepped into his 20s, something began to shift. Liang started spending his time with a group of younger merchants who lived by a very different code. To them, business was warfare, customers were targets to be conquered, and profit was the only measure of a man's worth. Slowly, Liang began implementing changes at the family business without consulting his father. He cut corners where Chen had always maintained integrity. He pressured loyal customers where Chen had long offered kindness. When Chen tried, with a father's tenderness, to address these troubling shifts, Liang's responses turned sharp and dismissive. During one particularly painful conversation, Liang looked his father in the eye and said, "You've become an obstacle to progress. Father, your old-fashioned ways are holding us back. Maybe it's time for you to step aside and let someone with modern vision take the lead." Each word struck Chen like a physical blow. Not because he cared for his own title or position, but because he saw, in that moment, his beloved son transforming into someone he no longer recognized. And that kind of grief, dear one, carries a weight no worldly loss can match. The tragedy deepened when Liang, driven by pride and the reckless ambitions of his new companions, secretly borrowed against the family business to fund risky ventures. When these ventures failed catastrophically, it was Master Chen who discovered that everything they had built, over generations, was suddenly drowning in impossible debt. And in perhaps the cruelest cut of all, rather than accept responsibility, Liang turned the blame upon his own father. Picking up from where we left, we saw how Liang's recklessness had plunged the family into ruin. And in the aftermath of that devastation, rather than accepting responsibility, he delivered one final, cruel blow. "If you had supported my vision instead of undermining it," Liang declared coldly, "none of this would have happened." Master Chen, heartbroken yet unwavering in his love, sold everything he personally owned to cover his son's reckless debts. He gave up his comfortable home, his most cherished possessions, even the few precious belongings of his late wife, treasures that had kept her memory close. Through it all, Chen never publicly reproached his son. He didn't disinherit him, nor did he allow bitterness to poison his heart. His love remained steady, constant, even as it shattered him from within. But Liang's final betrayal was still to come. Humiliated by the failure of the business, Liang decided to leave the town entirely. And on the night before his departure, he approached his father, not to seek forgiveness, nor to offer regret, but to make one last demand. "You owe me this," he said coldly. "Give me whatever money remains so I can start over somewhere else." Master Chen looked into the eyes of his only son and saw a stranger. Tears gathered and rolled down his weathered, lined face. Yet, without hesitation, he handed Liang the last of their money. As his son counted the coins in silence, without so much as a word of gratitude, Chen whispered softly, "I failed you, my son, not by loving you too little, but by not teaching you how to love yourself." That night, Liang left without looking back. For months afterward, Master Chen wrestled with the most painful questions a parent can face. Where had he gone wrong? Had his love been too generous, too protective, too blinding? Had he clung too tightly to a vision of the son he wished for, instead of accepting the one who stood before him? One quiet evening, as Chen sat in meditation surrounded by the fragrance of old tea leaves, a memory surfaced, sharp, clear, and undeniable. He remembered his own father, a simple farmer, a man Chen had once felt embarrassed by in his youth, ashamed of his father's plain ways, his lack of refinement, his quiet simplicity. Only many years later, after life had humbled him, had Chen come to truly appreciate the wisdom his father had quietly embodied. It was a wisdom spoken not through grand words, but through presence, through steady hands, through unshaken love. In that moment of remembering, Master Chen felt something within him shift. Perhaps, he realized, Liang's rejection was not a failure of love, but an unavoidable step in his own soul's awakening. Perhaps the values he had tried so desperately to pass down weren't lessons that could be inherited like property or money. They had to be lived. They had to be discovered through personal failure, struggle, and eventual self-understanding. And maybe, just maybe, a father's role wasn't to prevent his child from making mistakes, but to love him unconditionally through every mistake he needed to make. That realization brought Chen an unexpected, quiet peace. He came to see that the love he had given so freely to his son, though seemingly rejected, was never truly wasted. Love given without condition becomes part of the receiver's story forever, even if it takes years or lifetimes for that seed to bloom. Time passed. Master Chen rebuilt his life, not with grand ambitions, but with simple intentions. He opened a modest tea shop, a humble place where weary travelers and townsfolk could find not only tea, but peace, gentle conversation, and small lessons of wisdom whispered between sips. Nearly a decade later, on an autumn afternoon brushed with golden light, Chen looked up from his counter to see a familiar figure standing hesitantly in the doorway. It was Liang, but the arrogant young man who had once left with pockets full of resentment and pride was gone. In his place stood a man aged by struggle, weathered by hardship, his eyes no longer sharp with defiance but softened by years of painful lessons. "Father," Liang said quietly, his voice cracking, heavy with emotion. Master Chen looked up, and in that instant, his heart expanded with the same fierce, steady love that had never truly diminished. "Not for a moment. Welcome home, my son," Chen replied simply. No explanations were demanded, no apologies required. Love, once again, was enough. Over steaming cups of tea, Liang began to speak. As we left, Master Chen and Liang reunited in that modest tea shop. A conversation long overdue began to unfold. Over simple cups of tea, Liang quietly shared the story of the years that had passed since he left. He spoke of the failures that had humbled him, of the betrayals he endured, and the lonely nights spent wondering where his life had gone wrong. And, at last, through eyes clouded with tears, he confessed what had taken him so long to see. "I understand now," he whispered. "You loved me not for what I accomplished, but for who I was. And I threw that gift away, because I didn't understand its value." Chen smiled with infinite tenderness, a lifetime's worth of sorrow and love resting in that one expression. "My son," he said gently, "love that can be thrown away was never truly love. True love is like the sun, it continues to shine, whether or not we turn to face it. Your rejection taught me something precious. It taught me to love you even more purely, without expectation, without condition." And in those quiet words, a deeper wisdom revealed itself. This story illuminates the profound mystery of the fourth spiritual test. The pain of betrayal by those we love most isn't a punishment for loving too much, it is an initiation. A sacred invitation into learning how to love more perfectly, more freely, more unconditionally. When someone you cherish wounds you deeply, you stand at a spiritual crossroads. Will you close your heart to protect yourself? Or will you rise to the higher path, learning to love without attachment to how that love is received? In Buddhist teaching, this is the evolution from conditional love to unconditional love. Conditional love whispers, "I will love you, if you behave in ways that please me." Unconditional love, however, says, I love you, because love is my nature. Not because of what you do. Or don't do. And to be clear, this doesn't mean becoming a doormat. Master Chen didn't chase after his son when he left. He didn't enable his destructive behavior or excuse his mistakes. It means releasing the need for others to validate our love by reciprocating it in the exact way we imagine. It means understanding that our love is never wasted, even if it seems rejected in the moment. For all true love plants a seed within the heart of its receiver. A seed that may take years, or even a lifetime, to bloom. So, let's practice this gentle transformation together. Right now, close your eyes. If it feels comfortable, bring to mind someone you love who has deeply disappointed or hurt you. Feel the familiar ache in your chest, the strange mixture of longing, pain, and tenderness their memory stirs. Now, take a slow, steady breath. Imagine yourself as Master Chen, sitting in that tea shop, feeling the shift in your heart from, "Why don't they love me the way I love them?" to, "How can I love them more freely, more purely, regardless of how they love me?" Breathe out the need for them to be different than they are. Breathe in acceptance of their right to walk their own path, even when that path leads them away from you. Even when it causes you pain. The Buddha taught, hatred is never appeased by hatred. It is only appeased by non-hatred. And this wisdom applies just as surely to disappointment, resentment, and heartbreak. When we stop expecting others to fill our heart and instead allow our love to flow because it is our very nature, we become free. Free from the heaviness of unmet expectations. Free from the endless ache of needing others to respond in kind. And that, dear one, is a freedom worth everything. And so, dear one, as we close tonight's reflection, let this truth settle gently into your heart. Love, when it is pure, asks for nothing in return. It shines not because it is seen, but because shining is its nature. The fourth spiritual test is one of the hardest any soul can face, the ache of betrayal by those you love most. Yet if you can hold your heart open through that storm, if you can learn to love without clinging, to forgive without condition, and to let go without bitterness, you will discover a freedom and peace untouched by this world. Thank you for walking this tender part of the journey with me. If this teaching has brought even a small moment of peace or clarity to your evening, I invite you to gently support our sacred space by subscribing to Daily Dharma Wisdom. When you do, you'll be the first to receive new teachings, quiet meditations, and timeless Buddhist stories to nourish your spirit. And don't miss our next video, where we'll continue this sacred journey into the fifth spiritual test, a challenge that arises when life seems too quiet, too still, and the soul begins to wonder if it's been forgotten. I promise, it's a teaching you won't want to miss. Until then, may you sleep peacefully, love deeply, and carry the quiet strength of compassion wherever you go. Thank you, and see you in the next reflection.